For this set of weekly challenges, we're going to be racing a French tractor. We then go ahead and race another French car, this time around a Citroen with a pretty bizarre suspension setting. After that, it's onwards to the streets of Tokyo to throw around a VGT at way over 200 miles per hour at night. We then get an opportunity to take a Ferrari back to its homeland of Italy before finishing the week off at Suzuka, my all-time favourite track, for some dynamic weather racing. However, before we get into the video, just a quick shameless plug. I'm trying to get this channel to 60,000 subs by the end of this year. So if you want to stay up to date with everything Gran Turismo and motorsport gaming related, then feel free to leave a like, subscribe and turn your notifications on. Anyway, let's get to it. So here is an overview for the weekly challenges for June week 4. This will end on the 3rd of July 2025 at midnight. Now, as for completing one event, you're going to receive 100,000 credits. For completing 3 of them, it's 200k, and for completing all 5, it's 500,000 credits. So purely monetary gain here in a rather quick time overall. As for event number 1, it's one of the latest events to the game, added with update 1.60, that is Willow Springs International Raceway and the streets of Willow Springs, featuring the Sunday Cup. After that, we have a brand new special event in the form of the Citroen BX1 made, this time around at Dragon Trial Gardens. And yes, that's the one that doesn't feature the death chicane. After that, we head over to Tokyo Expressway on the south counterclockwise for the VGT Trophy, before heading over to Italy and Lake Maggiore full course for the Ferrari Circuit Challenge. And to finish up, we head to Suzuka Circuit, my favourite track in the entire world, for the WTC 800 and some actual race cars. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the first event of the week then. The Sunday Cup event over at Willow Springs and the streets of Willow Springs. This is a straight up quick 2-lap sprint race. Now, of course, as always, I will run all the events on the hardest possible difficulty and stay as close to any PP recommendation and car recommendation as possible. And my car of choice for this one would be a tractor, actually, a French tractor at that, the Peugeot 2008. Now, in terms of this event, there's a total of 10 cars on the grid, 9 AI over that 2-lap sprint period. However, just note we are on the streets of Willow Springs, which is notorious for being incredibly tight and really difficult to get overtakes done. So really, overtaking is going to be at a premium, and that is probably what's going to make this event a lot more tough. I also kind of noted that a lot of the AI that are leading the event are much quicker than anything else on the grid. So if you are very close to the recommendation like I am, and of course running the hardest difficulty, it's probably the hardest Sunday Cup event we've ever had. And I think that's again just because it's so tight on the layout and incredibly short. All I added to the Peugeot was a few modifications to take it to around about 140 brake horsepower, and of course run the comfort softs instead of the default comfort mediums, which did the job nice and easy. A 2-second gap in the end there as we come across the finish line for our first tick of the week. As for the reward for this one, again relatively low, 40,500 credits, but of course we do also get 100k added on as a nice little bonus for completing the first of the weekly challenges. Let's move on to event number 2 then. This is a brand new special event, of course themed around one of the latest update 1.60 cars, the Citroen BX1 mate. This takes place at Dragon Trial Gardens. As for the finer details, well, there's nothing to really write home about here. It's a typical 3-lap sprint race with a total of 8 cars on the grid, of course 7 AI in front of you. Your specified car, of course, must be the Citroen BX19 TRS from 1987. First place is 40k, second is 24k, and third is 16k. Now, of course, your main rival cars are all going to be the same exact car as you, however, they are tastefully modified in different ways, shapes, and forms. Car restrictions, BOP is off and you must use a garage car settings are allowed. Race settings, there is no damage, and none of the penalties are turned on. Anyway, let's get to it. Now, you probably wouldn't be able to guess my car of choice here, but it would be the Citroen BX. I know, incredibly difficult to get that one predicted. But let's move in to the actual event itself then. So of course, it's a 3-lap sprint. You have a total of 7 AI up in front of you, 8 cars on the grid, including yourself, all running the Citroen BX with its hydro pneumatic suspension. And I really mean this in the best way possible. It is absolutely awful for a track racing game, but I guess it adds a little bit of character to the Citroen. You will really have to get to grips with just how boat-like this thing handles in all the best way possible. Now, something to note, whilst I did run the event on the hardest difficulty and I just put a few minor upgrades on the car, mainly a sports exhaust and of course a different compound of tyre, the sports hards, this made the event extremely easy, although I would note that some of the cars were running probably more upgrades than me. I don't know if it's just due to the weird suspension on the Citroen that the AI actually struggles to really get the power down here, but they did seem incredibly easy to beat, really no matter what you running. So being totally honest here, I don't think anybody's going to have an issue getting this second event done. It was probably one of the easiest special events I've done in GT7 period. In fact, to the point where it was far too easy to actually be any way, shape or form enjoyable. However, that is the second tick of the week. As for the payout for this one, 60,000 credits with that clean race bonus. Unfortunately, a relatively low paying event. However, that's going to move us into our third event of the week. This is the VGT Trophy at Tokyo Expressway South counterclockwise. Now just note there is a PP limit in place of 850, however that does mean that a lot of the VGTs are eligible and can race here with a fair few upgrades on them. Now as for my VGT of choice, well it would be the Genesis VGT, which I honestly think is probably one of the better VGTs in the game just because it is absolutely mind-bendingly fast. Now as for the event itself, it's a 5-lap sprint race with a total of 16 cars on the grid, 15 AI up in front of you, and it's definitely a mixed bag of different VGTs. Some of them are incredibly off the pace and nowhere near the 850 pp cap. However, just note there is a few of the vehicles here that are incredibly quick, and I mean that, so you're definitely going to need to pick something with relatively high power and a decent top speed. The cars you want to watch out for are the Porsche VGT, the Jaguar VGT and the Genesis VGT. Those three vehicles are insanely fast and they will give you a very good run for your money. However, luck can be on your side like it was for me. The Porsche VGT for me was stuck behind a lot of traffic for the majority of this event, and that is easily the fastest car out there. So if it does get stuck, you're going to be able to build up a pretty decent gap before it can even get anywhere near you. So overtake it and absolutely run for the hills if you want a relatively easy win. If it does end up spawning in right towards the front of the grid, then it's going to be much harder overall, but I took this victory with relative ease. As you can see, a nice first place, over 10 seconds in the lead come the end. That is our third tick of the week, and in terms of the payout, much better this time around, 127,500 credits for not too long of our time. We also get our daily driving marathon, which was unfortunately a 3-star, and we also get 200,000 credits on top as a bonus. Let's move in to the fourth event of the week then. So the fourth event of the week is the Ferrari Circuit Challenge, this time at Lake Maggiore on the full course layout. Again, this is a 5-lap sprint and there is a PP limit in place of 700 performance points. So again, it can be feeling a little bit limited in terms of your car choice here, but there's plenty of ways to get around it. My car of choice would be the Ferrari F12 Berlinetta. This does have a few minor upgrades to it to make it much more better through the corners and overall an incredibly enjoyable experience. Again, it's just one of the road cars that I feel didn't transfer well from what it can do in the real world to in-game. However, it did improve in terms of the performance with the upgrades I have on. Now there's a total of 5 laps up in front of you on a relatively long course in GT7, a total of 15 AI up in front of you. However, again, it's a mixed bag, a little bit like the VGT Trophy. You're probably going to hope that some of the faster cars get caught up in traffic. Now for me, a lot of the 458s did, which is a good thing, meaning that they kind of got stuck up behind some of the older Ferraris and I was able to just pick them off one by one, and in fact at first I was moving through the grid with relative ease. However, the one main car you do need to look out for, which sits incredibly close to the 700 pp rating, is the F8 Tributo. That thing is miles above anything else on this track and it is incredibly quick and will typically spawn in towards the front of the grid, and at that point it's then going to overtake the 458, which usually leads this event, and then disappear off into the distance. I was only able to manage to catch him on the 5th and final lap. He had great handling, great top speed, and I had to get my elbows out a bit just to get this move done. As you can see, braking as late as possible into that corner and giving him a little bit of a shove. After that, we did manage to build up our lead by about 2.5 seconds as we come up across the line, and that would complete our event. definitely the most competitive one that we've got so far on this weekly challenge list. That's our 4th tick of the week and 105,000 credits as a payout for this one. As expected, getting a little bit too elbows out with the F8 there did absolutely butcher my chance at getting the clean race bonus. Anyway, let's move in to the 5th and final event of the week then. The WTC 800 returns once again, this time at Suzuka Circuit, and I believe this event does have the possibility of spawning in rain formations, so you want to keep your eye on the weather radar as well as your fuel and tyre usage. And honestly, this is when Gran Turismo is at its best. It's just a shame Polyphony doesn't take advantage of it. My car of choice would be the Subaru BRZ GT300, of course the reward version we received yesterday for the viewers campaign. Now, as for my strategy here, it would be a bit of a mixed bag. The main thing I want to do is keep the tyres in good conditions. I went for a set of racing mediums, as these can go genuinely quite far into the event. I also ran the car at fuel mix 6 to just keep as much fuel back as possible so I can go for a full sprint at the end. After that, I just wanted to pick the cars off one by one and slowly but surely work my way through the grid and get the gap down to the leader. Now, the lead car here is typically the Dodge Viper. Now, all the time pretty much in a WTC 800 event, when that car's leading, it's running the fastest possible setup it can, and overall it will pull out a pretty big lead over the rest of the field. However, I wouldn't focus on that car too much, as it is typically a 2-stopping car. The main car you want to kind of monitor and keep your eye on the leaderboard is actually the AMG Mercedes. That thing typically runs incredibly well here, so overall that is the car that you want to be aiming to beat through your pit stops and of course through your strategy. Now, while your main objective is to monitor the tyre and fuel usage during this event, you also want to monitor the weather radar, as if it gets a little bit grey, it does have the possibility of bringing rain in, and as you can see, the cooling conditions and warm tyres didn't go very well for me. On lap 7 I did manage to end up with a bit of a spin, which then forced me into a pit stop come the end of the lap. Now at this point, once again, I went for another set of racing mediums since the rain had dissipated and gone off in a completely different direction. So at this point it was all about getting the tyres, getting the fuel, and then absolutely sprinting towards the finish line. Again, Suzuka can be incredibly difficult to overtake just because of how tight and technical it can get at times. So on went the fresh set of racing mediums, and of course when it comes to the fuel, I do recommend overfueling the car. Although the notch might tell you just a set amount of laps, I always recommend just going a lap or two above so that you can change up your strategy if you need to. My strategy here would be a fuel mix 1 all the way to the end of the event. I came out in 10th position and began picking off the AI one by one, and of course inheriting a few positions due to cars doing the extra pit stop. As you can see, the Viper pitted in at the end of lap 9 going on to the final lap, and that allowed us to battle away with the AMG, and honestly it wasn't really much of a battle. Come the end of 10 laps, we managed to take victory with relative ease, pulling out a decent enough gap there, and of course with that victory we have our 5th and final tick of the week. As for payout for this one, 168,000 credits and a 500,000 credit bonus. Not too bad at all for a relatively short time. So let's open up the rewards then. First of all, we have our daily driving marathon. Unfortunately, this was a 3-star ticket, which are notoriously bad and the worst ticket I can get at collector level 50. And unfortunately, it's going to live up to that reputation, giving us 10,000 credits. What an absolute waste of time for that one. So we added those to the account and then went ahead and added the extra credits that we got as a weekly bonus. First of all was 100,000 credits for one event completed. For completing 3 of the events, it was 200,000 credits. And of course, for completing all 5, we're rewarded with 500,000 credits. This is going to take our total balance just upwards of 74 million credits. And there we go, that is our first set of weekly challenges since update 1.60. Again, you can get your hands on some relatively easy credits here in a very quick time overall. A huge thank you to all of my channel members listed on screen now. If you do want to support this channel, it is massively appreciated if you do want to become a member, and a huge thank you to all of you guys watching at home. I hope you have a fantastic start to your weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care guys, peace.